Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Modern Moms Roadmap to Balance podcast. Today, our guest is Kara Swanson. She is an anti-inflammatory nutritionist who helps women get rid of their inflammation, which allows them to lose weight, heal gut issues, have energy, and reduce or eliminate pain. Kara has 3 young kids and is married to her business partner, so she knows how important it is to keep nutrition simple but nourishing too. Kara loves helping women thrive and living their best lives so they can impact their family and others. Welcome, Kara. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So, the one question I ask everybody is, what is your definition of balance?
Yeah, I love that. So I think balance can look different, honestly, for me, like week to week and even day to day. Sometimes balance for me
Mm,
is a big project for a company, and that's really my focus. And then other weeks, it's all about the family, and what's going on. So I think
okay.
it's just like this
Yeah.
beautiful dance to maneuver.
Mm,
Honestly, for me, I feel most balanced when I feel like physically my best, which is why I believe it's so
mhm.
important for me as a mom, a business owner, a wife to feel my best, and do the things every single day that I know are going to really support me being in balance, physically and
Mhm.
mentally. Because when I feel good
Oh,
physically
yeah.
and mentally, I'm then able to feel more grounded, and more in control and just able to like
Mm.
handle what life throws at me.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that is so important. And for me as well, I notice a huge difference, and my husband also noticed a huge difference. If I don't get movement in throughout the week or even in the day, I am more irritable or I'm cranky. I feel off. So I think movement is a huge factor. It's really important.
Yeah.
And there's also been lots of studies, not only is exercise can be a not almost a cure for depression, but
Mhm.
specifically dance. There was this recent study that showed like dance alone could greatly reduce depression in people. And I don't think that's really talked about enough.
Yeah. Yeah. Anytime we move our body or it's like a different state, right? Getting it in a different state
Hmm.
just helps mentally. And yeah, I think didn't you do a reel recently of dancing?
Yeah.
I was like, I love it. I love it. And like we've been doing that more with our kids. Like, let's have a little dance party.
Mm.
Let's everybody get, just change that. It just shifts everything,
Hmm.
when you move
Oh,
for
yeah. Yes. And it's so simple. And it
Mhm.
can be so easy because I know when someone is stuck in a depression or in a rut or just feeling unmotivated, it can be hard to do something like go for a walk or
Right.
to do something else that requires more steps versus throwing on your favorite song that
Mhm.
gets you going and like getting up and just going with the music.
Yeah. And that's 3 minutes, right? Of your day. And
Hmm.
that can shift so much. Yeah, for sure. A lot of times the
Yeah.
things that we need to do to help us, right, are the simple
Hmm.
things, and that's where we need to get back
Yeah.
to. Yes.
Oh, yes, yes. Yesterday, I was texting a friend and she was letting me know like things that were going on for her. And I had responded with something like, if those were your friends, if they're really your friends, you will, or they will, sorry, if they are really your friends, they won't judge you for this.
Yeah.
And she was like, oh, that's so simple but powerful. And I'm like, yeah, but sometimes the simple things don't come easily when we're totally in it.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes you have to take a step back, right? And assess
Hmm.
what's going on. Yeah.
Oh, yes. Yeah. So what can you, going back to, bringing you on here today, can
Yeah.
you tell us a little bit more about inflammation specifically? What is inflammation for people who are like, what is that? Right?
Yeah, yeah. Yep. So chronic, yep. So there's a lot of times when we think of inflammation, we think of chronic inflammation, but there's also acute inflammation. And acute inflammation
Mm,
is just when, you hurt your hand, right? Or you get a scrape, it's going to get a little swollen, it might
okay.
just look red, and so that's just your body, trying
Mm,
to protect itself. So that's normal, that's fine. That's what we want, and that happens. But chronic inflammation is when it takes place underneath the skin, and then it starts to
Okay.
affect your organs. And that's where, damage comes into, it affects just every part, of your body. And, when you continue to let it go, it can lead to different disease, when unresolved.
Mm,
And that's oftentimes the inflammation that we really think of. Is when we think of like inflammation, it's like, okay, I got swelling, I have pain, I have aches.
yeah.
And that's often when those are the kind of the symptoms that we think of too when we think of inflammation. It's just those things, oh, I have pain,
Okay.
so I have inflammation. However, inflammation affects so much more than just that. Like I mentioned, it does cause, just different diseases, but it also
Mm,
affects your weight. It makes it really hard to lose weight and to even keep it off. It affects your energy levels. It's going to affect your
mm,
digestive health, with the bloating and constipation. And so that's why it's really key that we get rid of inflammation, because it's going to impact so much, of your
right.
health.
Yeah.
So it's not just, oh, I'm going to help you reduce pain. It's also, well, this can seep into so many other areas, of
Mm,
your health as well. So it's like a whole health approach too.
yeah. Okay. And so, sorry. So, how did you get into
Mm.
this being something that you really enjoy helping women overcome?
Yeah, that's such a good question. So I personally struggled with inflammation. Didn't know it at the time, but
Mm,
had a lot of pain, just kind of thought it was from an injury. Just kind of thought that was how
mhm,
life was. I had a lot of digestive issues, really low on energy. My hormones were imbalanced, couldn't lose weight. And I was just like, trying to figure out, what do I do? I was eating clean, and
mhm.
I would say that I was a healthy person, but
Okay.
I was just missing key puzzle pieces. And my husband also at the time was having some health issues as well, a lot of gut issues. He had pain. And so we were just like, we got to figure this out. And so
Mm,
we then just started researching and really just try to figure out, okay, what is really going on at the root level. And we realized everything that we had was coming from inflammation. And so
mm,
then from there, we had to figure out, okay, how do we then get rid of this inflammation? So we did more research, and we
mhm,
figured it was really the right nutrition. That's like
mm,
at the base of it was just, okay, how do we need to nourish our body? What are anti-inflammatory foods that we need to incorporate? And how then do we do this in a balanced way? Because a lot of
mm.
anti-inflammatory approaches are very restrictive, or they're elimination diets. But
Okay.
that's only going to be for a short time then. You can only do that for so long. And so our
Mhm,
approach is much different in the sense that we want it to be sustainable long term. We want you to be able to have that balance, that it doesn't have to be this all or
mm,
nothing approach. It's living in it 80, 90% of the time, and you can still have that
yeah.
balance too. So if I have something that's
Mm,
inflammatory now, it doesn't affect my body as much because I'm already at like an anti-inflammatory state. Does that make sense? And so it's
okay.
okay to have
Yes.
something maybe that's not as healthy, right? Because it's not going to like cause my body to go crazy as someone who's already in
Mhm,
that state, it's going to affect them a little bit
yeah.
more. So we, when we figured it out, like it just completely changed our whole lives. I started having tons of energy, and I had a newborn at the time. And it was just like, okay,
Okay.
this has never happened, before that I have with a baby. My pain went away. I,
Mm,
no more bloating at all. I used to get bloated all the time, and I lost weight and kept it off, and just like it doesn't fluctuate at all, and just like everything is just stayed stable. Same with my husband, his digestive issues went away. Some of his food tolerances went away. Um,
wow.
no more pain, that he had. And he had like arthritis in his wrist for like over 10 years, and so
Okay.
just just was able to see the power of nutrition
Mm,
and the effects of it, and how it personally has helped us. And so I was like, more people need to know this. Like
mhm.
more women, in particular
Oh,
need to
yeah.
realize how impactful this is, because when you feel good, it just impacts everything in your life. You're
Mhm.
able to just be a better mom, you can think clearly, you're more
Absolutely.
patient. And so it just, that's kind of how it led into, I was like, hey, we got to work with people. So just started working with
Yeah.
people, and yeah.
Okay. So 2 points that I want to highlight here is one, you've noticed all of this pain.
Mm.
Pain was probably a big factor because it's really noticeable, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think, or what I've noticed is a lot of people believe this is normal. Like
Yes.
this pain is normal because of my age. And they
Mm-hmm.
just brush it off.
Mm-hmm.
But from what I've learned, I'm not a medical professional in the sense like I'm not a doctor or a nurse, but I've done my own research and pain isn't normal.
Mm-hmm.
Pain isn't normal to have
Mm-hmm.
consistently. It's normal to feel pain in certain circumstances, but not to have this constant chronic pain
Yeah.
all of the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I see that all the time. Women are like, oh, well, it's just something I just get by, I'm just kind of used to it. And I'm like, yeah, but like you don't have to. And the thing with
Hmm.
inflammation that is so important to know is that it does not magically get better or stay the same. If we continue, that's where you're at, right? That's why it led to
Mm.
inflammation because you had it low grade and you just continued. And then now all these symptoms are
Yeah.
manifesting itself. You know what I mean? And showing up. And so it doesn't just get better or stay the same. It's going to get worse. Maybe that pain, oh, it's fine, now, but what's it going to
Hmm.
be like 5 years
Yeah.
from now? You still got a lot of
Oh
life to
yeah.
live. You want to feel good, and thrive now and years from now. And so that's really the heart behind it too is, hey, yes, I want you to feel good now, but I want you to age well. I want you to be with your grandkids,
Hmm.
do the things that you want to do, thinking future too, because that's
Hmm.
really important.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It is because you said, how are you going to feel in 5 years from now? But how are you going to feel in 10 or 20 years from now?
Yeah. Yeah. What we do
Right?
today affects tomorrow, but then it also affects years
Hmm.
from now. Yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing I wanted to point out was how you didn't specifically say this, but because this is around nutrition, it gives us more power in that there's
Mm.
something that we can do about it. There is
Yes.
so much in our life that we just don't have any control over, or we don't have, in the sense that something specifically that we do isn't going to make a huge difference. But in this case, with nutrition and what we put in our body, we have that choice and we have the power to choose.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, every day, all day, right? We get to decide what we are going to put on our bodies and are we going to
Hmm.
nourish it or are we not, and
Hmm.
how do we want to feel? And that's something, that's also hard because people understand that, yet it's almost like but you need the right tools, right? You need the right knowledge of
Yeah.
but what does that look like? And I think that's where a lot of
Hmm.
the confusion is, well, I think I'm doing right, yet I'm still struggling. Or I think I know, you know what I mean? And they're not willing to
Mm.
try something different as well. So it's,
Yeah.
it's also just getting them, women to understand, hey, if you're still struggling with this, you're probably missing some key puzzle pieces, right? And so we want to make sure that you have all the tools and the knowledge so that you can get to where you want to be, and feel good.
Hmm. Yeah. So what are some of those easier choices that women can start making right now? Because you mentioned some, I mean, sometimes, like you said, we don't know the options that
Mm.
we could be taking instead. We don't know the choices that we had. So I know this is kind of vague, but what are some choices that women can start making now?
Yeah, no, I love that. So I always like I'm like smiling and kind of laughing because they're so simple, right? And that's the thing.
Mm.
People want like these sexy things of like, it has to be hard, right? Almost in order to
Yeah.
work. But it's like, well, you have to get to the basics, right? Because if you're not doing the basics, then like you can't do anything hard, you know what I mean? Or it's not going to be
Yeah.
sustainable. Maybe you can do all these things for a week, but can you do them for years?
Hmm.
So one of the basic things is drinking enough water, like literally, are you drinking enough water? And a lot of women are like, oh, I am. And like, then I'll start working with them and they'll be like, oh, I actually started tracking and I'm not drinking enough water, or I actually
Yeah.
realized I need to be drinking more water, so
Mm.
that's really important. But as far as like the nutrition, high eating high fiber is what's really going to help get rid of inflammation, going on
Mm,
in your body. And so when you think of, fiber rich foods, it's going to be the fruits, it's going to be the vegetables, the whole grains, the nuts,
mm,
the seeds, flax meal, chia seeds, like all of those are so
okay.
nourishing. They have antioxidants, they're just great for your body to get rid of the inflammation. So focusing more on those is going to be
Mm,
beans. I didn't say that. Legumes, so great, for that
yeah.
fiber rich. But to bring that back to like specifically what you can do is have a high fiber rich breakfast. And that can look like a
Mm,
smoothie, that can look like oatmeal. It can be like chia seed pudding, something like that, but that's going to give you still enough protein, right? That you
mm.
need, because we're obsessed with protein right now. Still enough protein. You don't have to be obsessed with it, but it's also going to give you so much fiber and nutrients too, and it's going to keep you fuller longer. That's what fiber does.
Mm,
It literally, will
yeah.
keep you feeling fuller longer. It's going to help you, just reduce that inflammation. It even helps. Fiber even has like a second meal effect. So you have it for breakfast and then it continues on throughout the day. So like you're not even as hungry for
Mm,
lunch, so you're naturally consuming fewer calories just because of your breakfast, and then it
mhm.
continues. You have it that for lunch, it's going to continue on for dinner. So it's just like this cyclical thing that then adds
Yeah.
up and really impacts, your overall health.
Mm. That's that's a really great, I think that's a really great starting point because this is going from the stance of what can I add
Yes.
into what I'm doing now? Because a lot of the times I've noticed that people are like, okay, what do I need to take away? But that's, you're already kind of setting yourself up for failure in when you're thinking like, what do I need to restrict? Because
Yeah.
restricting can trigger this like
Hmm.
a fight or flight response in you because it's unfamiliar, and when things are unfamiliar for you, your body doesn't feel safe, and so you're going to start probably feeling overwhelmed and anxious about, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be able to have this anymore. So coming at it from this perspective of what can I add is going to help keep people like in a more regulated state and more in control
Yeah.
versus trying to take things away.
Yeah, I love that you noticed that it was all about adding in, because that's literally like my approach when I work with
Mm,
clients is we're not focusing on what you can't have. And I honestly don't even take that approach either. I'm not saying you can never have this again. I'm saying, hey, let's probably need to reduce this,
mm,
right? And eliminate, but that doesn't mean you can never have it again. You know what I mean? And
yeah.
instead, when you're focusing on the right things to nourish your body, like it shifts your mindset to, oh, this is what I'm going to choose to have, not that I
Mhm.
can't have that, I'm just going to choose to have this instead. And that really shifts it to not
Yeah.
feeling like, oh, deprived, but just, oh no, this is what I get to do to help me feel good,
Yes.
for the long haul.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, I love it. This is what I get to do.
Yes. Yeah.
Because the other thing too is oftentimes when we are told you need to get rid of this or you need to stop eating this, it's not even really that person's choice anymore. It's, "Oh, well, that's what my coach told me to do, or that's what my nutritionist told me to
Yeah.
do, and I need to do it." And then you're just kind of going along with this resentment starting to build up with maybe even the relationship you're having with your people or the relationship you're having with food.
Hmm.
And so that's not a great place to be because you're feeling powerless. You're not feeling like you have this choice.
Yeah, and that's something, yeah, that I talk about that I think is really impactful is shifting that mindset, right? And thinking it's not that you can't, but that you're choosing to. You're choosing to because XYZ, whatever your why is,
Yeah.
everything you choose to, and decide to do, not I have to. And that is really big because that does put the power back to you, in your
Mhm.
hands, and like, oh, I could have this. No one's telling me I can't, but
Yeah.
I'm going to choose to do this instead. And that's going to make you just feel better too, knowing, hey, I just literally had a client today on, message and say, this is the first time, that we went out and I think someone like they were, or no, someone brought ice cream in, and she's like, I knew I could
Okay.
have it. But she's like, I was like, you know what? I'm going to choose not to tonight. And she's like, and then she just
Mm.
felt so empowered to be like, I don't actually need it. I don't want it. It was just there, and I'm going to choose not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, wow. That's awesome. Because how many times, I mean, think about it. And everyone listening, really think about how many times do you grab something or go for something just because it's there,
Yeah.
right? Not even because you want it, but
Mhm.
just because it's there. And I'm
Mhm.
not saying like go get rid of everything in your house,
Yeah.
but that when you think about that, your perspective is going to change. And then you're going to have awareness around it.
Mhm.
And that's oftentimes where you need to start is just start building awareness of
Mhm.
what am I choosing in terms of what I'm putting in my body? Why am I making that choice? Does it really make me feel good? Is
Mhm.
this really something that's nourishing me or giving me energy? Or is it because it's just there? And
Yeah.
that's something that I'm just used to grabbing.
That's, I think, one of the coolest transformations that I see with clients is when they realize I don't even want it anymore. I don't even have a desire for it, or they're
Mm,
able to just stop themselves and think, do I want this right now? Like it's here, there's cupcakes or cookies, but like, do I want it? No, not really,
mhm.
and if you do, then you can decide, if you really want
Yeah.
it, enjoy it and then move on, like we can have that balance, but just again, it's like that just awareness, like you said, of choosing, okay, stopping and thinking, do I want
Yeah.
this? Yes or no? No, I don't. And
Mhm.
then you can feel empowered by that choice too.
Yeah. It's a lot of pausing and reflecting on the choices that we're choosing to make.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, taking a step back and realizing, okay, how do I want to feel, right? How do I want how is this going to impact me later? Same
Mhm.
thing with like just even like alcohol or something. Do I want
Mhm.
to feel groggy the next day? Do I want to be tired? Do I want it to impact my sleep?
Yeah.
Yes or no? No. Okay, that's my choice then, So it's just,
Mhm.
yeah, what is it not in the moment, but how is it going to be later on?
Mhm. Absolutely. And I know one of the things that you had said was this requires like a mindset shift. Can you speak more about what you mean by bringing mindset into this?
Yeah. Yeah, I think mindset is honestly foundational to, well, everything, but specifically to health, right? Because if we
Mm,
can't, I tell women all the time, if you can't change your mindset, you won't be able to make a lasting change because your mind is always going to go back to where, before, you know what I mean? Like we want to stay safe. Our mind wants us to keep us safe, like it doesn't want to change. It's like, no, this is where I want to
yeah.
be. And so that's why, whenever I work with women, it has to be not just about the nutrition and what you're doing, right? What you're adding in or what you're eating or the exercise,
Hmm.
but also where's your mind at? Because
Yeah.
everyone can be a robot for a little while, you know what I mean? And try to make
Uh-huh.
changes and make changes. But if you haven't shifted your mindset, you're just going back there. And one of the biggest
Mm,
mindsets that I see is just that all or nothing mindset, thinking that you have
okay.
to
Yeah.
be 100% or else you failed or else you just need to quit because why even bother. And that's something that I
Yeah.
really help women break through is that no, like that is what's sabotaging you, thinking you have to be 100%
Mm,
because then you're constantly starting and stopping, and then they're wonder, oh, I'm
hmm.
never getting anywhere. It's like, well, yeah, because you're starting and stopping. But what the difference
Yeah.
is okay, you had the cookie or whatever, a meal that wasn't so great. And instead of stopping or beating yourself up or continuing the spiral, right? You're just like,
Mm, hmm.
you stop. There's a couple of things that you can do in that moment is you can just be like, okay, like I'm moving on. That happened. That was great. It was a birthday party or whatever. I wasn't thinking, I'm going to move on from that. And then that's really not going to affect your whole journey in the grand scheme of things. You
No.
know what I mean? You just get
Yeah.
to move on.
Hmm.
But I also encourage women to really assess, stop and think, okay, in this moment, could I have done something different? Could I, have made a
Mm,
different choice? Could I have prepared ahead of time? Sometimes it's no. Sometimes you're like, no, I chose to do that and it was great. And now I'm still gonna move on. But sometimes,
yeah.
a lot of times it's, yeah, I didn't prepare. You know what I mean? Like I was overly hungry and I just like went to the pantry and just ate, and then
Yeah.
like didn't want to eat dinner, because I wasn't, I ruined it from all the snacks. You
Mm-hmm.
know what I mean? My appetite from all the snacks. So it's like learning, oh, okay, I keep doing this thing. It's happening. Now here's what I can do instead. So it's you
Yeah.
want to make sure that you're taking that like just a minute to assess, oh, I've been doing this every few days, like getting
Mhm.
overly hungry. Okay, well, what can we do instead? But
Oh,
let's look
yeah.
at the lunch. Are we nourishing or not? Or do you need a snack?
Hmm.
What does that look like to set you up for success, in the long haul? But really, I mean, it's just learning different tools to shift that mindset to think, okay, it does not have to be all or nothing. No one is
Hmm.
perfect and no one needs to pretend that they are. We don't have to be, you
Yeah.
know, nourishing. Yes, we want to make the best choices, right? As much as we can. But of course, everyone's going to have that cookie or that piece of cake or whatever,
Yeah.
that meal out. And that's
Hmm.
okay. And being okay with that too.
Yeah. And I'm definitely someone who is, I love food that
Mhm.
tastes really good. That's like there and you remember it and it's just I love good tasting food. And so when people are thinking like making these kinds of shifts, I
Mhm.
know or from experience, I'm almost positive they're thinking, well, I'm gonna have to eat this like bland food.
Yes.
I am going to like be miserable in my choices. And what do you think about that? If you're just like listening to those things that I just said, that's your mindset around what
Yeah.
your beliefs are
Mhm.
around this, not about the choices that you're making with your food,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
There's still good, there's still ways to make your food taste amazing that's going to nourish your body. This doesn't mean you have to eat boring, bland food from now
Yeah.
on.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, listen, I love food. Like whenever we travel, the first thing I'm doing is looking at what restaurants can we go to. You know what I mean? But I
Oh
also
yeah.
really love eating healthy. So I'm like finding
Mm,
the best, like healthier restaurants. Like what can we, you know what I mean? So because I've learned it's twofold, one, it's I've shifted my mindset that healthy food
mm,
it's not only nourishing, but it's so good. And when your
yeah.
taste buds change, it changes
Hmm.
everything, right? When you're used to
Yeah.
highly processed foods, of course an apple's not going to be as good, or of course, some whole grains and beans are going to taste as good. But when you shift that, that's when the flavors come alive, and then it's also
Hmm.
just learning. It's a learning process. And again, your brain
Yeah.
wants to keep you safe, but it's like, no, I can learn this, how
Yeah.
to cook foods that do taste good, you know what I mean, and what that
Hmm.
looks like, and what are now my new favorite foods, or family favorites that I can make, that are still going to be healthy and nourishing, but also taste good too.
Yeah. Yeah. And going back to what you were talking about too, I wanted to point out that because you were talking about how someone might have slipped or they weren't prepared, so they ate a bunch of maybe chips, or they were at a birthday party and they really didn't want it, but that's all there was left was cake or pizza, right? And so one of the things too is what consistency looks like. Consistency isn't doing something perfect and correct every day
Mhm.
for however much you planned. Consistency is doing those things regularly enough. So when you make a mistake, that's okay. You keep going. That's still consistency.
Mhm.
5 days out of 7 is still consistent.
Mhm.
20 out of 30 is still consistent.
Mhm. Yeah, I think consistency is going to mean it's what is your best, right? And
Mhm.
how can you be consistent? Like we all know, when we're like, oh, I'm just not doing it, right? You just choose to do it as
Mhm.
opposed to, man, my day got away from me. I had full intention of working out and it just slipped by. Let's let that go. You know what I mean? But when you're like,
Mhm.
I'm mad or I just don't want to do it. Like that's different, right? Because you've made
Yeah.
that choice specifically not to do it. And so I think it's
Mhm.
it's also like, yes, let's give ourselves some grace, but like let's make sure that we're doing what we need to be doing, right? So it
Mhm.
goes
Yeah.
like hand in hand, with that. I always have clients or, and we're creating like, okay, their action items for the week. It's like, these are your non-negotiables. I
Mm.
want you to like get in that mindset of like, no matter what, I am going to get these done. Because what happens is you do them, you do them, you do them, and then that's going to create naturally that consistency, and you just do them automatically. And if
Mm-hmm.
you don't do it, you're just like, oh, shoot, like the day got away, probably is what's going to happen, right? Or, something, just you ended up going to dinner instead of, eating at home or whatever it is. But oh, you're right back into it. You're right back into your routine, as opposed to what a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times happen. It's like, oh, well, I messed up. I guess the heck with it. You know what I mean? I'm just not going to do it at all, where we don't want that, just continue
Mm-hmm.
on. But it's also making sure that you're like, what do I need to get done to make me feel good every day, and get those done as much as possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what I want to highlight here too is because I want everyone to hear what you said was this really highlights the power of having someone who's there that you can rely on in terms of like an accountability partner, a coach, because they're the ones who are helping you to stop and think, okay, why is this not working for me? Right. And together you can come up with a plan of what's really getting in the way. Is
Mm-hmm.
it you're not having enough food that you really want to eat in your plan? Maybe
Mm-hmm.
your workout is something you're dreading instead of looking forward to. Maybe that needs to change. But you're not going to know what needs to change unless you're stopping and thinking about how you felt and why you made some of those choices you made. Which
Absolutely. I
having a
mean,
coach can
yeah.
help you with the accountability portion of that.
Yeah, I think it's invaluable. I mean, whether it's a therapist or,
Mm,
a bit for business or whatever it is, I
yeah.
mean, it's
Hmm.
so impactful for them to be like, "Hey, you're doing this and this is why you're stuck. Hey, let's do this
Yeah.
instead." Oh, that was
Hmm.
they make it so much easier, right? And they see
Yeah.
things that you don't see either, or that you
Absolutely.
have maybe not been as honest with yourself about, And so you're like, "Oh,
Uh-huh.
I'm so glad that you like opened my eyes to that," because when you know what to change, it's so much easier then to change because you know exactly what to do then,
Yes.
to change. Yeah.
Yeah. I have a therapist friend and colleague that we meet weekly. I mean, if as long as there's no holidays or planned vacations or something, but we meet every Monday at
Mm,
11:30 and we talk about our business, talk about things that have been coming up for us, even sometimes personal things that have come up for us and how they may have been impacting our business.
mm,
But we set aside time to do that because, like you said, sometimes we can be so in it that we don't notice even a small thing or even
mhm.
something that might be impacting us that it's like, hello, no wonder you're feeling that way. You're going through all of this, or you've been
Yeah.
dealing with this.
Mhm. Yeah, and just knowing like, okay, how do I actually then change that? What actions can I take?
Hmm.
It's one thing to know it, right? It's good. You have to know something, right? That you need help, but then it's also like, okay, but like what are the actions that I take to get there? And how
Yeah.
do you do it in a way as well? There might be a lot of actions that you need to take. So which ones do I take first, to stair
Yeah.
step to where I want to be and need to be too?
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So one of the other things too that you had mentioned earlier was about gut health. And I
Mhm.
bring this up because I feel like this has been not necessarily a hot topic, but something that's not normally discussed that there's now more research on about the impact that our gut health has on the rest of our body and the rest of how the rest of our body.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the gut health is really important, for everything, and so I think that's inflammation plays such a huge role
Mm,
in your gut health, and that's why it's so important that we make sure that we have good gut health. We're getting rid of the inflammation because that then impacts everything, and so
mm,
yes, you have gut health, but at the core of why you have it is inflammation. So it's like taking it a step further, right? Is okay,
okay.
well, what's
Yeah.
causing that? Why can't I process foods very well? Why do I have this intolerance? Why am I
Mm,
constipated or the IBS or Crohn's? It's
yeah.
inflammation, that's causing, you know, that gut dysbiosis, which we need to
Mm,
get that into equilibrium, so that you can, yeah,
yeah.
feel good. Yeah.
And what do you mean by equilibrium? How does one go about that?
Yeah. I mean, from getting rid of inflammation, right? From
Mm,
nourishing your body with the right foods, from making sure that you're not eating inflammatory foods, you're eating the high fiber rich foods, because we want to feed the good bacteria. We have good and bad bacteria, and we want to feed the good bacteria, what it needs to be able to
mm,
work to be happy, and in that equilibrium.
yeah. So for any mom listening right now and they're like, I would love that, but I can barely get my kids to eat the food that I'm serving them now. And our
Mhm.
schedule is crazy, right? We're in sports and
Mhm.
everything is sometimes there's a wrench thrown into things. What do you tell those moms who feel like they're just super busy and struggle planning, making this part of their life now?
Yeah, no, I completely understand because I'm there, right? And
Mm,
I mean, I've never been more busy, and I'm able to see, okay, I think it comes down to a couple of things. When you have the right knowledge, it makes it so much easier because you're like, okay, like I know what to
mm,
eat. I don't have to think about it. You know what I mean? But when you're in
yeah.
that state of confusion of, do I eat this or do I not? Or, and how to make it simple. How can you make a quick 10-minute meal or, like 20-minute
Mm,
meal and it
yeah.
still be nourishing, but yet, it doesn't take a ton of effort. And I think that's, really important as well. And then I think it comes down to a couple other things is we do what is important to us. So what is it? And I say that like very empathetically because I get it, right? It's hard, especially if you're like,
Yeah.
this is important, but like I'm like, I'm drowning here. I hear you, but what
Hmm.
can you do? And that's what leads to my other point is you don't have to change everything at once. And that's why my approach, one of the reasons why my approach is different is we don't change everything at once because we're busy, and we have
Yeah.
lives and it's hard anyways, again, for our brain to be like, I can't change all of these. Like you want to go back,
Yeah.
you go back to what's normal every single time. But if you focus on a few key things every single week and you build upon that, that's going to like
Mm,
almost like you're tricking your brain, because you're like, oh, I'm
yeah.
just do a couple things. It's okay. Like we're fine,
Yes.
and then you kind of move forward.
Slowly.
Yeah, and then you're like, "Oh my goodness, I just changed all of these things and it felt effortless," because I
Yeah.
wasn't trying to overhaul everything. So that's the number one thing that I would tell moms, women is just start small. What
Mhm.
are a couple things that you can do? Make them your non-negotiable, get consistent with them, and then you can build upon that. And that's literally what I help women do, is what are the key things that we need to be working on? What are the
Mhm.
most important things? Let's just work on a couple of them. And then here's how we create consistency. Here's how we build those habits.
Mhm. I'm so glad that you brought that up, this like whole starting small thing, because you're right. Sometimes people are just like, I just want to do it. Just tell me everything I need to do and I'll change my life. But that is not going to change your life, because going back to what I was saying earlier, you're going to become so dysregulated because uh, um, this is not familiar to you. And
Yeah.
so making these huge changes, like to make that big of a change all at once and very fast, is not going to be helpful. And you're likely going to go back to the patterns that you were already, because
Yeah.
this is something that I tell my clients and the people that I work with is we can't make these big drastic changes all at once. We have to go in and start small,
Hmm.
because that's going to keep you in a more regulated state. That's going to keep your nervous system happy. It's not going to dysregulate you, is by starting small, because that's the
Yeah.
most important thing in terms of making changes. Is we don't want to trigger ourselves into this fight or flight state. We want to stay in a more regulated state when we're making these changes, because it's not going to feel as scary for us.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's also going to create that lasting change as well, right? Because how many
Hmm.
people they keep, changing everything, going full force, but it's only maybe a month. I'll be generous, maybe a month, right? And then they stop and then they do another one. And it's constantly back and forth as opposed to, hey, let's work on these things. Okay, now let's work on
Mm-hmm.
these. Okay, now you're getting closer, you're getting closer, and you're creating these habits, which habits are going to be the foundation for you to make lasting change, right? Because you're changing your
Yeah.
old habits to new habits. And that's what we're trying to do, which then once you create those habits, it's just something you naturally do. And that's the beauty of it. Then you're just like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
now I changed all these things and it's just a part of my life. Okay, I created that consistency. I don't even have to think about it. It's just something now,
Yeah.
that I do. And I think another thing to your point about starting small is when it's really important for that reason, right, that we've talked about, but also for your body to adjust. So,
Mm-hmm.
especially if you have gut issues, it's going to be really important that you start small, especially when you're adding in, more fiber rich foods, because your body's going to react and it's going to be like, wait, what? What's going on? You know what I mean? Like, I
Yeah.
feel a little more bloated. Well, that's normal, right? You're feeding your gut, good bacteria. It needs to, process it, and it'll even out. But that's why we do it starting slow,
Mm.
is we're not changing everything in the nutrition. Let's focus on breakfast, and then let's focus on lunch, and then and it's moving forward so that your
Mm-hmm.
body can adjust as well. Yeah, kind of like what you were
Yeah.
saying, you're the fight or flight, like our brain
Yeah.
can't change, everything at once either.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So partially what I'm hearing too is this is not like I'm going on this diet to help my inflammation and then I'll go back to whatever. This is a
Yeah.
lifestyle change, which is also another reason why it's okay to take this slow, because this whole process is like within your lifetime. Not that it's going to take 30 years to complete all of these changes that you're
Yeah.
talking about, but
Yeah.
that can help in terms of the mindset of it's okay to start slow. You don't have to overhaul the entire way you eat, because this is a lifestyle change, not a
Exactly.
diet that you're trying for 90 days.
Right, because if you think about any diet or any cleanse or detox, it always has an end point, right? Like you just have to do this for a
Hmm.
month. You just have to do this for 90 days. That's all you got to do. Just white knuckle it. You can do it. But that's great, right? And everyone's like, "Oh, I felt amazing. I feel so good." But then like what happens after the 90 days? You don't know what
Yeah.
to do. And so that's why
Hmm.
I take this approach of, okay, yes, let's do this for the long haul. How do you want to feel for like the rest of your life? Do you want to
Yeah.
feel, good? Yes. Okay. Well, this is how we do it, is like, let's make these habits while also having this balance. And I think that's why we're stuck in this, diet mentality, because it's like, okay, just white
Mm.
knuckle it. And then when I'm done, then I can eat whatever I want to eat. Well, then you're right,
Yeah.
literally right back. So all that hard work, is
Yeah.
really for nothing, as opposed to,
Hmm.
okay, I'm going to create this lifestyle. And within this healthy lifestyle, I can have balance, so that when I go out with friends, it's okay. I can move on. And
Hmm.
that's what's going to just
Yeah.
keep telling you, because you're not feeling like I can't have this or it's off limits. It's yes, I can, right? And sometimes we can
Hmm.
choose to, but most times you're choosing not to because you know how it's going to make you feel. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
S- So if people are listening right now and they're like, "Oh, I really want to work with Kara,"
Mhm.
what is the best way to reach out to you? What does that process look like when they are working with you?
Yeah. Yep. So the best way is to just go ahead and schedule in a call, with me or my team, and then we can
Mm,
really hear what's really going on. What do you want to see? What are your goals? And then we can share about the program, all of that. You can find out about, it's called Stuck to Thriving. You can find out about that on my website, as well as schedule in a call there. And then the process to work with me is just, I'm going to give you the tools and the knowledge and the education of what you need to get rid of this inflammation, but also create
mm,
a lasting change. So you're going to know exactly where to start, what to do, to help you inch closer, right, to those goals while
yeah,
creating these habits so that it is a lasting change, so that you can feel good now and years from now, and also prevent diseases from happening, not only reverse
yeah.
them, but let's prevent things from happening as
Mm,
much as we
hmm.
possibly can. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for all your knowledge and wisdom today, Kara. It was a pleasure having you today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.